So, Matthew, maybe to begin with, you'd like to just give a little introduction to yourself, some of the work you've been doing, and maybe what's just been launched on the 2.0 framework.
Sure. So, hello everyone. Matthew Fontana, Head of Ecosystem at Streamer. So, up until recently, I was quite focused on the developer relations side of things, so helping external devs having a smooth experience with the Data Unions platform and the Streamer network. And recently, I've shifted into a bit more of a kind of crypto-centric role, and helping out with the DU2 launch. And so what is DU2, Data Unions 2.0? It is it's quite a big architecture change from what we had initially created in kind of, I guess, the 1.0, in that we moved away from the monoplasma scaling solution that we built, and we moved to XDAI as the kind of home for these data union contracts with conduits to the mainnet. So with Data Unions 1.0, we did have quite a robust scaling solution, but because of the gas prices on the Ethereum mainnet and some other issues that came up, the funds were still hostage on mainnet. So even though we had quite clever off-chain mechanisms to facilitate the running of the data union, at the end of the day, that withdrawal still came through the mainnet. So the big change I feel is that these funds can now be accessed, can be withdrawn onto the sidechain, onto XDAI, and then can kind of move throughout the crypto ecosystem without these huge transaction fees that everyone experiences on mainnet. That's one big side of it. The other angle is that the data token becomes multi-chain now. So a wrapped version exists on XDAI, and that wrapped version can be used in the DeFi products on XDAI, and obviously all the other applications on XDAI, and it can also move through these other chains as well. So yeah, those are the big parts of DU2.
Great stuff. Okay. So Shiv is still having a problem connecting. So I think we can go to some of the other questions that we have here focused on 2.0. So I suppose related to that, maybe you'd like to talk about some of the features that are particularly exciting from your perspective that have launched for 2.0. Particularly the multi-chain aspect. I mean, what do you think that will bring to the framework? And
yeah, so I suspect one of the cool things that we'll see come out of DU2 is the ability for the admin to issue out rewards in a non-equal way. So one of the characteristics of data unions, especially Data Unions 1.0, where this was kind of enforced, is that every member is sort of equal in terms of their contribution and their reward back. So with DU 2.0, the admin can kind of deliver special rewards to different members. And in that way, they can create these interesting sort of referral and incentive games. And as well as that, you can also defer your withdrawal to the admin. So they can do it on your behalf, and they can offer you different kinds of rewards. So it doesn't always have to be, data token back into your wallet or through some other exchange. They can do other reward schemes in the context of the data union. So it's kind of tackling the gas issue head on with a more on-chain approach. And I guess the great thing is that previously with our plasma approach, it worked quite well, but it didn't really have those composability sort of features that we all saw in the last 6 months DeFi explode because everything kind of can connect to each other, and I think Plasma based solutions were sort of not as composable as pure on-chain solutions. So this move into being on-chain and that being enabled by these cheap transactions on XDAI is really, I think, the biggest story of this 2.0 upgrade. And hello, Shiv. I can see you now.
Hello, Shiv. Oh. We can't hear you. No, you're still muted. Have you joined the audio?
We can read his lips. He just needs to speak slowly.
No, nothing yet.
Oh, bugger. Yeah, I guess I can. If there's any other questions that are a bit more technical, I can tackle those as well.
Sure. Yeah. Let's just see if we can get Shiv back.
Okay.
I think he's still having problems, so let's move on to something else then. We have a few questions here. Quite a lot of excitement about some of the other data unions that have been maybe mentioned more in passing recently. So maybe you'd like to talk a bit about some of those, maybe starting with unbanks. What can we expect from that coming up?
Yeah, so unbanks, we've had a few chats with the team, a very strong team. I like them a lot. They presented the proposal for the data fund, which was accepted, and they're now developing the data union. I believe their current task is working on the tech that will obfuscate some of the personally identifiable information that can flow into the data union. So, for example, if I buy an ice cream and I don't want my girlfriend to know about it, it can kind of be a bit more. It can be hidden in a certain way, or perhaps if it costs $1.20, it can change to $1.19. So, clever people can't reverse engineer that data back to something that's personally identifiable. So I believe that's what they're working on now. Really excited to see the launch, which I think will be sometime this year.
Fantastic.
Right, if this doesn't work, I don't know what will.
No, we can hear and see.
We can hear you.
Great.
Well, there we go. Mission accomplished. Apologies for that. I clearly needed to have downloaded it and not done it in the web browser. Discord, that is. Tom, sorry, do you want to throw me a question then? I'm happy to chat.
Yeah, sure.
Matthew, I've been hearing what you've been saying. So.
Yeah, so maybe let's just start with your introduction, Shiv. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about your role and some of the work that's been going on for the past 12 months in data unions. And then I can edit this at the start of the video. So.
In case people don't know who I am, I'm Shiv Malik. I'm head of growth at Streamer, and actually, being very passionately involved with data unions right from the start. So if you want, actually, we started this about 3 years ago, just after we'd done the crowdfunding sale. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to put my computer. There we go. After we did the crowdfunding sale, we had we were sitting around a table in Zug, and there were about 10 of us at that time. And we were wondering, what are the adoption ideas that we could think of? And one of them ended up being data union. So it started really right at the inception, if you want, of Streamer as a kind of open source project. So from there, I think we built out that journey has just been utterly, I think, for me, fantastically impressive. Building out not just a technical framework around which data unions can build, but also actually bringing people in. I know we've got Jalil here, and we might have others who have also watched this kind of development of all of these kind of organic businesses with a kind of a different idea of how data should be used and how it should be constructed and sold, and how we obtain not just consent for data usage on a personal basis, but actually active participation in that process. And then, of course, the rewarding system. So it's just been a really impressive journey. The specific things of the last 12 months, I think, that have been most interesting have been obviously one, watching Swash go from strength to strength. They've been a project that's been around for basically 2 years. They're now at 14,000 members, probably more. Keep going up like fairly considerably every day or every week, which is wonderful to see. They're also, looking now for not just seed funding, but at that next round as well of funding to really get themselves off the ground so they can start not just getting more members, but once they hit that magic number of around 50, 60,000, then they'll be able to start selling data at a considerable scale. It's almost a binary thing. No one will talk to you before 50,000. Afterwards, everyone wants to purchase your kind of raw data stream. So, that is really impressive. There's a lot to go of, but there have been now other data unions kind of getting off the ground, and there's actually other data unions not even in our ecosystem who we know and been in contact with, and so as a whole, the whole ecosystem is growing. Regulation has been another big thing. The EU has decided to support data unions. They call them data cooperatives, we call them data unions, data potato, but it's the same thing. Regulation is really important. Why? For a couple of reasons. One, when you're going to data buyers, they are like, what are you, data union? What's this thing? And that's a big hurdle to get over. If you just go, well, we've got a European trust mark and the European Union supports us, that's a much easier conversation to have. So that's the first thing. The second thing is obviously then it does give a kind of parameter of support for building these organizations out. So people who are doing this know, okay, well, if we slot into this framework, great. And this is what we should be building for. So it gives some certainty on the other side as well, and trust. It also sets a direction of travel. It also means that they're going to put down some money on the table. We reckon about 2 billion, because that's what they've stated sort of publicly. And that's a lot of money to get the data union ecosystem off the ground. I mean, it's not just for data unions, but it's that kind of thing. And we've also seen finally on the regulatory front a lot of movement to open up real-time portability, right? Why does that? Why do we care about that? Well, it means that if you can unsilo the data and people have portability rights already under GDPR, but at the moment, if you've ever done this process before, it's incredibly laborious and you don't get anything at the end of it. So no one does it, right? Which is you have to email and wait 30 days and then you'll end up with a JSON file and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? Well, real-time portability will mean that you'll be able to get access to your API stream of information. And that means you can say, oh, what am I supposed to do with that? Well, I can pass it to a data union. And suddenly all I have to do is just click in once and press yes to a couple of things, and my data union will have my real-time information from some of the big platforms out there. So those are just two things. You can read the rest of the blog for all the other updates, of which there are a good many.
Great, thanks for that. So I guess the question we had from the community that would follow on from this is about the data regulation coming out of the EU. Do you expect we'll see similar regulation taken up in the UK and US anytime soon?
Yeah, I mean, so just so people are aware, it's in draft form. It's being knocked about now between all the different elements of the EU. So there's the council, there's the presidency, there's the commission, and then there's the parliament. But actually, they're moving very quickly, impressively so. And I kind of got some background information on that yesterday or the day before. Which is that they suddenly went into gear last year and said, we need this right now. Because normally this process would take 4 or 5 years, but it's there, it'll get passed this year, and the budget's been lined up as well to support it. Will we see other countries doing it? Yeah, I'm pretty certain. I mean, when Europe brought out GDPR back in 2016, people weren't certain what would follow, but you're still seeing countries basically copy and pasting what the EU's done. So they've led the way, and people will now be, interested in what they're doing with this, and will probably start copying them regardless of whether they operate in Europe. I mean, there's plenty of companies that basically don't operate in Europe at all, but adhere to all GDPR regulations, because that one customer from, France will sue them, and that'll be it. So, it sets the standard for the rest of the world anyway. If I could add one thing to that, which is to say, I can't imagine Americans watching Europeans make money from data from Silicon Valley companies while they make nothing. I can't envisage that situation being tenable for very long.
Sure, yeah. Anything to add to that, Matthew?
No, just full agreement there. I think that would be, it'd be hilarious to see Europe take the charge there and make all the money with America left behind. I don't think it'll happen. I think they'll, once that first domino falls, everyone will see the writing on the wall. So,
and we're months away from that, really. So it's very exciting.
Absolutely.
So actually, one other question that I think ties in nicely here, Shiv, is you mentioned in your blog about data unions acting as a bridge between Web 2 and Web 3. Maybe you can expand on that sort of in relation to Silicon Valley and what you discussed there.
Yeah, so, and this has been mulled around by a few people and inspired somewhat by NFTs, right? So, from the Web 3 side, what have we got? We've got money, right? So that was Bitcoin. We've got smart contracting, Ethereum, etc. And we've got financialization, right? So that's the DeFis of this world, and the Uniswaps, and the lendings and the compounds and blah, 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 blah. But we don't have assets, right? Because assets is what basically then allow, those are all, the other three things are just tools, right? Tools to use to do what with? Well, to shift assets around, basically, or to price them, or to ensure that they, get divvied up correctly. That's the contracting. So what are the assets, right? Well, what does Web3 have as assets? Not much, it turns out. We've got some data, all right, and that's basically Chainlink, right? All that price data, the vast proportion of it is what Chainlink's built off. And they're now worth whatever it is, 11 billion or something in market cap. But what else do we have? Well, we've got, digital assets like CryptoKitties, right? NFTs. So we can make our own, right? And then we're importing them in a couple of ways now through the NFT route. Whether it's Top Shot with basketball NBA kind of highlight reels, right? That's just video from Web 2, which is shifting it to Web 3. Or DIY kind of art stuff, right? But actually, what the big thing is data, right? It's already digitally native, so it's not like a house, right? Getting a house, which is very much Web 0, if you want, into Web 3, that's really difficult. But data is really easy because it's already digitally native, so it's easy to port in. So that's, imagine if you can get that kind of asset, right? It's what $1 trillion or whatever it might be, hundreds of billions of dollars for sure, into Web3. That would be brilliant because you can use all those tools to financialize it. And that's what Ocean is doing, right? That's what they're thinking along as well in terms of the financialization, lending and trading on data, right? Not just selling. What is Web 2? What's the problem on the Web 2 side? Well, it's the regulation. Well, tick box to that one. It's kind of got solved, so that's great, or it's getting solved. But also you need the kind of incentive for people on that end to permission their Web 2 APIs from Spotify or Netflix or Google to port it to a Web 3 style data union. Okay, well, what can we give them? Well, what have we got? Money. We do digital money really well in Web 3, don't we? So just that's basically our model. So I think that fleshes out that point there. And then you're going to see, you think NFTs are big. Wait till, in a year's time until we start porting data on massive volumes into Web3.
Okay, great. So
yeah,
I think,
and just
on.
to add to that, a stream can be an NFT. Maybe it will be one day as well. What is an NFT? It's like it's ownership of something. I guess ownership of anything really. And so it kind of matches in with the Streamer ecosystem quite well. So yeah, maybe there is something Streamer can pick up on that too.
Side point, it is fascinating just being in this space just generally, right? And because I remember having the conversation about NFTs in 2017 when the standard was first devised. And the Golem guys were getting so excited. I was working with Golem at the time. They're getting so excited. Like, oh, we could do all these things. A completely off use case for Golem. But, watching that finally come to fruition and end up on I think it was on the front page of the New York Times, where an NFT sold at Christie's for 69 million. What a transformation, right? What a journey.
Yeah. The same thing with DeFi. We were talking about it for years, and then it just suddenly all happened all at once. So yeah, it's amazing.
Okay, so another question here from the community. I think this one for you, Matthew. So porting Data Unions 2.0 to XDAI happened rather quickly. Was that a lot of work, and can we expect ports to other chains? And Matic, BSC, Dot Optimism are a couple listed here.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. I won't sugarcoat it. It was a big concerted engineering effort to make it all happen. I won't understate the time and energy, as Shiv mentioned. Back at the beginning of the project was when we first had this idea of data unions, and it's now I can say that we've sort of made something that's robust and kind of can get the job done. So it's been a huge amount of work, but I think the question kind of carries on to this idea of can we do the same trick with other chains, and we can. So now that all this hard work has been done, we can actually copy paste data unions to different chains, and there are a few requirements to be able to do this from the chain and from the bridge. So I guess the criteria is that we look at is the chain EVM compatible? So that means sort of runs like Ethereum runs, so that our contracts can just basically work out of the box there. The second requirement is that the bridge is sufficiently decentralized and kind of advanced. I won't go into the technical details, but basically bridge technology is quite hot at the moment. It's being developed quite strongly. XDAI is, I would say, a leader at the moment. It's their bridge that could kind of tick all our boxes technically for what we wanted. But other chains are quickly catching up. So I think by the middle of the year, we'll be able to deploy on other chains. And I believe this question asked Matic, now Polygon. So yes, we have looked into them, and yes, it looks as though data unions could live there. On Dot, I believe, so Dot, I think it means Polkadot. So Polkadot has a bunch of parachains, and there are parachains that are EVM compatible. I believe Moonbeam is the big one. So we could certainly push data unions onto Moonbeam, for example. And we are looking at other chains as well. And I guess like the end result is that when data union builders are creating or deploying their data union contracts, they'll be able to choose which chain they want to deploy on. And it's not easy to predict like the winner in these sort of chain wars, I suppose you can call them. At the moment, we really like XDAI. We see a lot of synergy with their community. We see some DeFi traction happening there. So their Uniswap is called HoneySwap. We've added a pool data to XDAI pool there, so you can trade there. There's actually an arbitrage opportunity if you are sharp-eyed at the moment. So definitely recommend checking them out. We put in a big chunk of change for liquidity there. And so like now you can, bit of a sidetrack to the question, but now you can withdraw from the data union deployed on XDAI. It'll cost you, a fraction of a cent, and you can then put those funds into HoneySwap and earn liquidity rewards, or you can even move them to different chains. And there's no longer this requirement for a big Ethereum mainnet fee.
We're going to lose half our audience if we tell them about arbitrage opportunities.
Yeah. Don't get in before me. That's I should add that disclaimer after the call.
Also, Chain Wars sounds like the new Silicon Valley spin-off. That's much needed.
Yeah, I think it could end up being exactly that. Let's wait and see. I think it'll get pretty competitive for transactions, which is kind of nice. Kind of like we're the customer now, so we can browse and see which solution fits us best. And if XDAI starts to not look as good as some other chains, we can move, and data union builders can move their data unions. So we have full flexibility, and the future is multi. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Has there been any interest shown or outreach by universities, NGOs, etc., using data unions or the Streamer network, and the suggestion being there that they may be faster to adopt them than enterprises? Also, I think there's a slight echo.
That might have been me. Sorry. No, not really. Researchers find this fascinating because researchers often have a real problem with consent. And setting up a research study is actually the vast bulk of the work, right? Analyzing data turns out to be the much easier part. And I know that from my friend of mine who's also doing, for example, a research on heart disease. All the data is already out there, but sourcing it is just so mind-numbing. He's just literally handwriting letters to people, because that's the system that we have in the UK, to obtain consent to get people's kind of past information, etc., etc. So it's really difficult to do this sort of stuff. Now, at a lower level, IoT devices already have produced real-time information, right? And that's really, that's Jalil is on this call. He can probably talk to you about that kind of stuff, but because that's what he's working on. Now, imagine if you could already have a data set, and researchers would be salivating to get that kind of information, right, on a real-time basis, and augment it then perhaps with more personalized or more traditionally collected medical information from that data set. So that, that sort of stuff makes it far easier to do. And I think once these pools are there, you're going to find researchers. One of the things about the Spotify information is that the Bank of England found that using Spotify data, right, trends data, was far just as reliable as their own economic surveys in predicting the direction of our economy, right? The music that we listen to tells us on aggregate more about where an economy, or just as much as where an economy is going, as does if someone asks you, where do you think the economy is going? How much have you earned? What's, compared to last year, like a really complicated survey. So, I think we're going to end up with a proliferation of those things. But as yet, no.
It's a very interesting use case. I guess you could assess the mood of the nation by what they're listening to.
And it's not what you think it would be. If we listen to happy music, it's not. That's actually worse. The right. More complex, like Radioheadish music we listen to, the more it means that we're doing better. Apparently, that's what the association is. Right. Our brains have more free time to think about abstract French philosophy, basically in music.
Okay, cool. I would just add that the Tracy app is perhaps one example of an NGO being interested in the data. But yeah, I would certainly echo your sentiments, Shiv. That's more or less how I see it as well.
Have you found, what have you found from the independent developers? I suppose, Matthew, you've been more on the ground on this. I mean, what's their reaction been to data unions and the ideas around it?
I don't know if it's worth bringing Jalil here, and maybe he wants to talk, because he's obviously both an independent developer and working on that health data union. Jalil, do you want to say anything? Or maybe you can't also speak.
I think we're risking more technical challenges here, but let's see what we can do. Yeah,
I can speak for Jalil, I hope. So I guess I'm unfortunately the biased one. Yeah, maybe it would have been better to have a developer answer that question. But so far it's been really positive. When the builders come along and they start experimenting with data unions, there are exceptions, of course, where you kind of brush up against certain kinds of friction, whether it be authenticating with other services or something that's just a bit crypto. Crypto is just hard in general, but the framework, I think, has been quite well brought in, or quite well accepted by builders, I suppose. It's a small group that I'm talking about, but there hasn't been any negative reactions. It's always been quite positive. Not much more to say. I suppose it's. I think what the big takeaway is that they don't have to do that much, and we saw this in the hackathon as well. It's like adding a few lines of code in some cases, like literally 5 lines of code, and now your app is now a data union app. So the idea that the streamer network is there and it's free and you can hook into it very easily. And then we have this data unions framework on top, which does a lot of the work for you in terms of aggregating the data, authentication, all these other moving parts you just don't have to worry about. So we're shouldering a huge amount of the burden, and our platform is so that you just add that little sugar on top. Now, I'm maybe exaggerating a little bit, but that's been my experience with working with these builders that have been playing with the data unions framework. And that's really our goal at Streamer, to empower developers to build something great on top of this platform that we've been working on.
Awesome. Well, Jalil, if you'd like to add anything to that, you will hopefully have permission to speak, so feel free to join. But no pressure, and if not, then we could just jump onto another question. So thank you both for that. So another example of someone in the community building something pretty interesting is Sergey Muller and his recent Ifttt integration. Matthew, maybe there's something you'd like to add about that, any doors it opens for data union integrations, and we'll give some context on that.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting integration, and Sergey is wonderful, as I think we all know. He kind of did this on his own volition. He jumped in, he saw the opportunity, and made it happen.
Brilliant.
So just a kind of a brief summary on what if this then that services. They basically they've done the heavy lifting with 600 or so brands and services. And so you can mix and match different APIs, and they provide a nice drag and drop or UI to be able to do some very light logic in between these APIs and create something interesting. So, for example, you can, in what they call an applet, say connect to the Spotify API and then connect to the streamer network. And so if you play a new song, then that song gets sent as a data point into a streamer network stream. And you can also do it the other way, in that you can listen to a stream that you created or a stream that you've subscribed to. And when an event comes in, you can even have some filters. So if this event is X or Y, then you can push it to any other of their services. So, for example, if you have a sensor that takes a picture, that picture goes into the streamer network as a data point. That data point gets noticed by IFTTT and gets sent to 500 pixels or some other image service, and it joins a photo stream. So the streaming network can be used as an input or an output. And so there's obviously, so much you can do with that. But it also gets my mind thinking as well, is this relevant for data unions? The answer is it could be. The interesting thing is they do a lot of the heavy lifting for the authentication, which is a big part of data union apps. So I believe, and I haven't tested this, but I think this could work in that developers, the effort they need to put in is now even smaller if they go down this path where they could create a very simple wrapper application and just tell people to sign up to if this then that and get them to push data to a certain stream. So it's a very interesting direction that data unions can take. So I think the takeaway is watch this space. We'll have plenty of integrations to show off over the summer. So looking forward to that.
Brilliant. So let's fire through a few other questions we have here. This might be more of a network one, but it's quite common. So when can we expect staking or rewards? Is there anything we can say on that?
Soon.
Soon. Okay.
Yeah, sorry guys, I don't have any new information about that. We've just been heads down getting DU2 released. That took a lot of energy, and now that that's done, our focus shifts towards the token migration and to the Brubeck milestone. So once the Brubeck milestone happens, then we can and the token migration happens. I think that's in an order of a few months, give or take. Don't quote me. But once those two checkboxes are ticked, then we can look into these incentive mechanisms that we have promised you guys.
Okay. So Shiv, this might be one for you. You've touched on it a bit in your Data Union update blog, which covers many of the topics we discussed here in some detail. But maybe you can speak a bit about the GSMA partnership and I guess anything else on the enterprise side around data unions.
Yeah, I think so. I was involved, in two kind of big outreach exercises last year. The first one was the policy and regulation, and the second one was with GSMA. And the idea behind that, and we were thinking about success. We were like, we won't have any success on the policy front, but we're very likely to have success on the enterprise front. And of course, it was the other way around. And it's much better to get the policy and regulation because that sorts out the landscape for 440 million people rather than just with one company. So what happened with GSMA? A couple of things. Because it was a pandemic, because it was lockdown, actually they were internally a little bit in tumult because their big money-making conference had to be cancelled, not just once, but twice in a row, because it usually happens in kind of March. So they suffered from that twice. And that meant it was a little bit difficult to navigate around because actually the team that we were working with, the whole strategy team in the end got sacked. And that made it very difficult to kind of pick up the pieces after that. And that happened just as we were about to actually launch this internally for GSMA. So, by the way, if you don't know who GSMA is, they're basically the kind of industry body for mobile network operators. And the reason why we'd gone there, just to take one more step back, is because we thought, okay, look, mobile companies have an interesting relationship with their customers. They have a lot of data, usually most of it's in the back end. Which is often governed by very strict regulation around privacy and actually what you can do with it. So in Finland, for example, it's a criminal offense if you work for an MNO to even open up the customer file without a whole slew of permissions, etc., etc. So, and it's country by country level. So, it's a tangle when it comes to privacy stuff. However, they have very little front end of phone relationship. So they can't really use much of the data depending on which country they're in. And if they do, of course, they're doing it without the consumer's consent overtly, right? Without their participation. So Vodafone is a huge retailer of customer information. But not on the personalized basis, on the aggregate basis. But of course, customers don't really know that. On the other hand, lots of German firms are just like, we won't touch this at all because it goes against everything that we stood for. And they have a cultural relationship with spying in East Germany that, is still very much alive and informs their business decisions. So we thought, well, look, we could provide this kind of data union service to them, and that would be a way of getting not just consent, but active participation in the data monetization thing. They were all very welcome to it, very open to it. They've been talking about it for a long time and therefore looking for solutions. They all know that that's probably the way forward. You have to do it with customers. So that bit was all incredibly promising. And what we'd offered them was a really simple first step. Let's just sandbox this, is basically what we said to them. And I think why it didn't in the end get over the line. We set ourselves a very high bar, which was that we didn't give ourselves much time to warm people up. That was, I think, a mistake. And we also made it a chargeable program, which I think was right. But that just made it a little bit more of a bar. And during the pandemic as well, it was just really difficult for anyone to change. I think the fundamental issue, though, was this. It just takes a lot of departments to worry about data. And you need departmental sign-off from, sort of 10 different parts of an organization to get a data union off the ground. So what does that mean? It means that it never happens. And no one's got a line item which says data union expenditure or data monetization expenditure, right? Which would be handy. So it kind of falls in between the cracks. And I think it was quite difficult, I think, for us to say, let's just keep trying this for another couple of years when we could be putting that resource into where it really matters, which is, in indie developers thinking about new businesses and actually providing results, right? Watching Swash's journey has been far more interesting and far more beneficial for Streamer than going after enterprises, hands down. Well, and that's on a variety of fronts, actually.
Yeah, and I would just add that it fits our strategy kind of pivot towards Crypto Island a bit more. So I think Henry has spoken about this previously, is that enterprises are a bit slow and generally speaking, and Crypto Island, as we sort of termed it, is it's creating this whole financial system. We no longer need the kind of legacy systems. We can kind of work on our own island, so to speak. So that strategy is sort of lends itself to the indie developers that are also experimenting in the crypto space. We see much better, faster traction, and I think the enterprise track will reactivate maybe this year, and we certainly don't turn our backs to it. But yeah, as Shiv mentioned, there is a lot of friction, and it's still really hard. We put I'm putting words in your mouth, but Shiv worked so hard on this program, and I don't think we did anything wrong either. Like it's just really, it's hard work, and sometimes it's you have to take some misses with trying. So yeah.
I mean, and just to give you the details, we had a partnership with GSMA, which is really hard to get, and we managed to sign that up within 4 months basically. We managed to get in the room with about 15 MNOs. We were chatting to CEOs of various mobile network operators at some points. So we were right there, and I think it's not for want of trying on our end. But then we had a realization. We're like, we don't need these people, right? We don't need MNOs. All you need is a mobile app, right? Anyone can make a mobile app. There are literally hundreds of thousands of mobile apps out there in the world. And that would be the delivery system. The only thing that they have, and I say only, but I deride it a little bit, but it is obviously that relationship with the consumer, and potentially, scale of, in the order of millions rather than in the tens of thousands. But, I think what we're seeing now is that, yeah, you can scale these data unions. It is possible. It is possible. If you kind of, A, believe in it, B, you're producing decent data, and C, I think, using tokens, right, to kind of get those referrals in and get those numbers up. So it is absolutely possible.
Yeah, good stuff. One follow-up to that, maybe for either of you actually, is what sort of areas do you think you'd like to see independent developers coming in and experimenting with? We talked a bit about research. Are there any particular sort of sectors or spaces you think that are fertile ground to be explored for any devs listening?
I don't know, Matthew, if you want to go first.
All of them. There's so many, I'll try not to swear, but there's like thousands of different opportunities out there. It's almost criminal that this framework is ready to go. There are all these different possible data unions, but we just need to kind of awaken the developers and get them on board with the mission. We have some strategies to make that happen this year. We've of course been working hard already, and we've been seeing the results. But yeah, we're going to keep on that path. In terms of absolute knockouts, health data, very valuable, and I think we'll see data unions in that space. I'll also see health data related marketplaces in that space as well, which Streamer is a part of in some ways. We're all wearables.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a data. Obviously, people now realize I'm a data union addict. It's like crack for me. So I wake up thinking of new ideas most weeks. Here's $1 billion idea, like for free. Go, someone please build it, right? That's all I want. Which is, and it's just like a Swash-like plugin, but it tracks the adverts. It just tracks the adverts that you watch, right? Whether that's and getting it cross-platform is a little tricky, but entirely possible, right? So if you can get it on a desktop and your mobile, because advertisers don't know that information, right? One of the biggest industries in the world is obviously advertising, right? It's worth billions and billions and billions, and they don't know if people watch their adverts and how they watch them. And I think you only need a very small sample size of people to actually do this to get a really decent understanding of what's going on and how effective advertising is. And advertisers. I was speaking to them actually earlier today. They'll put billions into this kind of thing. So themselves, or millions, to get it off the ground because they want it. And the people who have that information are Google. They won't give it over. So it's great. It's all there. And I think one last thing on that front is when the Digital Markets Act comes out with that new real-time portability enhancement. Matthew, I think you tweeted right yesterday the DuckDuckGo list, right? You're like, well, there what, like it's 15 data unions right there, right?
At least, yeah.
So when that real-time portability kicks in, it won't just be Google that will be able to raid, right? And basically build real-time streams of information coming from people's Google accounts. It'll be the other big platforms as well, and it'll be just easy, right? At that point, it's far easier doing it that way than it is trying to collect it in other roundabout ways, right? Through a mobile app front end or a plugin. Just get it from the platform, and you'll have the right individuals will have the rights to do it
now. Awesome. So we're coming up to the hour. If anyone has any questions or comments on anything we've said, please just fire them in the Discord chat now, and we'll try and get to them. But maybe to close from each of you, I suppose looking ahead to the next 12 months of data unions, what kind of things do you expect to see, and what kind of things would you like to see?
I can go first, Shiv. I don't want to put numbers on predictions because they'll probably be quoted, and maybe Shiv is bolder in that respect. But I think in terms of, I can say this, I guess, in terms of numbers, in terms of the number of data unions, the number of data union members, and the sort of data throughput through data unions. If we don't see exponential growth in the next 12 months, I would be disappointed. So yeah, that's my that's my prediction: exponential growth in data unions. What else? I think the enterprise track will light up this year. It's just too big an opportunity for them not to at least dip their feet in. So I think that track will get interesting in the next 12 months. I think we'll see new kinds of marketplaces emerge, perhaps a bit more niche, and really focusing in on one specific use case or one specific feature, for example. I think that track will pick up. Maybe even some advanced tokenomics in terms of data unions. So data unions are a bit of an incentive play in many ways. So I think we can really create some interesting ways to incentivize growth, incentivize participation and marketing of these data unions. So I think we'll see some interesting things there.
I would say this. I'm going to go for 3 to 5 years. Matthew's covered the ground on the 12 months thing. So, and 12 months isn't very long. But 3 to 5 years out, I think the EU has set down that ultimately the vision is that all data that gets brokered will have to be brokered through a data cooperative data union. In the end, right? So it's like they want it to be a business that people can trust, because at the moment it's just a shambles, absolute shambles. It's an industry that is vital and worth billions, and yet no one trusts it. It's crazy. So you need to bring the trust back in, and this is the model, this is the chance that they're giving people like us to do. We've got to roll up the dice. If we get it right, then they will push forward and say all personal data has to be brokered through a legal entity like this. And that will just be phenomenal for the framework that we've already developed in adoption. We're already, so I made a prediction last year at Ethereum at Denver. And I said that Swash would be the biggest, it'd be one of the biggest, if not the biggest app out there in the crypto space. And actually, almost right. It's got 14,500 users. I think one of the biggest ones, leaving aside the gaming ones, maybe, which is unfair or more favorable to me, a bit biased. Uniswap has, I think, about 18,000 daily users, so it's not far off. And I think and Swash would have, I think, had a bit more exponential growth if they've been waiting for our framework to come out, so they know that they're doing this in a more robust way, which is the token referring model. So if you refer a friend, you get some extra money too, to join Swash. So I think we're about to see that. We're on the cusp of all of that, and we're seeing it actually already. You look at the numbers for Swash growing; it's already there. I know that I know that we had Unbanks on the line earlier briefly, and Alan Jare working on a really, really amazing idea with financial data. And Tracy, who isn't here also, is working on the Spotify Data Union, basically, idea, which can be rapidly expanded out to, in fact, incorporate not just that, but also, iTunes and Audible data, right? And then it's a huge audio union, which is, again, another £500 million idea. So, anyway, sorry, I'm rambling over, but yeah, lots to look forward to. And I think that big vision is certainly there. And it's the ball's in our court to make this happen. It's great.
Awesome.
I'd add one last prediction. It's that wolf memes will be, yeah. Watch out for those. I think we'll see more of those.